left me staring at the stars all by myself. Still up I go to the other place I know where I can be up with the unified feel. That's where I am a free man. That's where I am free. That's where I am a free man. That's where I am free. Across the universe I see another me. Across the universe I bleed another me. Out I go. Out I go. Across the universe I see. Far away, I'm near. I'm far away, I'm near. I'm far away, I'm near. I'm far You've been walking real tall in a town so small, thinking everybody knows your name. What you gonna do when they catch up to you, send you for a ride upstate? All them tattoos on your skin don't make you less a fool. There's enough to the words I'm saying, 'cause I'm taking you back to school. It's easy to be a big fish, baby, if you're swimming in a small pond. It's easy to feel real small when all the people who make you feel big are gone. If the boots you wear don't fit your feet, you better find another pair. Outside of that small pond, baby, you ain't going nowhere. gonna bite you back one day. If you paid your dues, you'd make it, but you don't think you got dues to pay. And all them muscles under your shirt don't make you any less a tool. Listen up to the words I'm saying, 'cause I'm taking you back to school. It's easy to be a big fish, baby, if you're swimming in a small pond. It's easy to feel real small when all the people made you feel big are gone. If the food you wear don't fit your feet, you better find another pair. Outside of that small pond, baby, you ain't going nowhere. It's easy to be a big fish, baby, if you're swimming in a small pond. It's easy to feel real small when all the people made you feel big are gone. If the boots you wear don't fit your feet, you better find another pair. Outside of that small pond, baby, you ain't going nowhere. Outside of that small pond, baby, you ain't going nowhere.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Ben from Universal Audio. Welcome back to a very special episode of UA Live. Some of you guys may remember, it was like a month or two ago, we did a 2-day back-to-back session with none other than Jacquire King, where we recorded a rock band. We recorded drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, and then we did a second day where we focused just on vocals. So hopefully you guys have already checked out that whole smorgasbord, but obviously, judging by you guys' reactions in the comments, you all were super stoked about the song, and I saw the glint in everybody's eyes. You're like, "Are we gonna get this one as a Luna session?" Well, yes. The answer is yes, absolutely. The song was created 100% inside of Luna, created basically on air along with you guys. So after the fact, Jacquire took it, did some edits, did some mixing on it, and so today what we're going to do is we're going to walk through that final mix session that Jacquire put together, and will be available for you guys to download inside of Luna. So without further ado, Jacquire King, how's it going, man?
Good, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing great, man.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Man, so this was a blur, for you, it was just a jam-packed 3 days of writing, recording, producing, live streaming, kind of all in one. from what your memory is, like, how did this track come together? How was that process for you overall?
Well, yeah, the 3 days was a blast. Well, actually, it's a little bit more because we had to set up all the video stuff too. But anyways, I learned a lot. It was fun. I mean, I've done this kind of thing with these guys before where, we basically set ourselves up for a day or two, and, with a goal to write a few jams. So it was fun. It was fun to do with the idea that we were going to immediately share it with everybody and kind of get under the hood a little bit and behind the scenes. It was, really exciting. And I think, the way that we'd done things in the past, we were just doing instrumental stuff, and we had kind of created a little bit of a catalog of some pieces. And I sort of had the idea on a couple of them that, be cool to have Spencer come in and do some vocals.
Yeah.
So this opportunity was the first time that we were all about 6 of us together to sort of come up with a composition, because Spencer had been sort of writing his lyrics post music. So it wasn't a big change, but we all really enjoyed being together and creating these jams. And then so to kind of have everybody together and have had some experience under our belts and really kind of a little bit better idea of what we were going for, because in the past, we haven't really focused on any specific genre. We just kind of do whatever. We kind of dabble in a lot of different genres, and we'll continue to do that. But this was just a fun opportunity. It was like really focused. There was a very specific purpose, and we had to be able to present it. Also, we had to come up with a little bit more structure. So all those things. I mean, I enjoy all those things. I enjoy like being loose and creativity, but I also like structure. I mean, it's kind of 2 sides of my brain, I guess.
Right.
So it was a blast. We had a great time.
Nice. So, the cool thing about this is, like, we literally, we don't have to spend any time talking about how'd you record this, how'd you do that, because it's all documented on video. It's all on, you guys can go back and replay those shows. They're still available on our YouTube channel. So today we get to focus just on the mix. So I'm curious, after we finish the session, kind of what transpired after the cameras were turned off? Like, what were kind of the next steps in your mind and in that process?
Well, we turned the cameras off, and Spencer and I I guess we had a few more little vocal bits that we did. So we weren't, once we turned the cameras off, we spent a little bit of time just trying to figure out what to do with the end of the song. So we tried a few different things. Probably 50% of it is you won't find in the session. So it's kind of like behind the scenes stuff that nobody saw and didn't end up in there. But we were just trying to figure out how to arrange the end. So we just put down a bunch of stuff, and I kind of took a break from it to get back to some other projects. And then I spent some time re-engaging that and kind of sorting out what we were doing with the vocal arrangement in the end. And then, it was about I needed to do some editing, because some of it we were kind of trying to do it like a normal session, kind of some of it's on the fly, moving fast, trying to move at the speed of creativity. I don't like to get bogged down too heavy on when it's, when possible, to kind of keep moving. I don't want to get bogged down to kind of get to, the next thing. If it feels like we've accomplished the idea and the part is mostly there, maybe needs a little bit of editing, I'd rather move on and kind of come back to it. And then, it's also, for me, what on projects that I'm sort of fully in charge of producing, engineering, and mixing, I like to sort of start the mixing process as I'm finishing the editing process, because I find that when I'm focused on the two things, it helps me not be over analytical about the editing.
Yeah.
And and sort of focusing also on the mixing, kind of, jumping back and forth between those two jobs is really helpful, because it's like, as you're maybe editing something, subconsciously you're kind of listening to the mix. It's like, oh man, that part's too loud. That part's too loud.
Yeah.
So you just kind of quickly turn it down, then you go back to editing, and vice versa. You'd be mixing, and it's like, that snare drum feels like it's a little bit out of pocket from where I feel like it should be. So I'll fix that real quick, and then go back to balancing the drums or whatever I was doing mixing wise. So just kind of got into that flow.
Nice.
And that was like, basically I took like a 3-week break from it, and then I got back to doing that stuff, and kind of mixing and editing at the same time.
That's really cool because yeah, like you're totally right. You're kind of you're assembling both sides of the puzzle at the same time, right? You're working on yeah, kind of refine the edit, refine the mix, and you're getting that static balance. And as we dive into the session here, we're gonna quickly see just how the static balance just becomes kind of your starting point, and then from there, there's a lot of automation. There's a lot of little touches here and there of effects and processing that really take it from it already sounded good. Like we left that broadcast, we're all like, damn, this already sounds really good. Like, how could you make that even better? So I think that's really what I want to focus on today with you is what are the elements of this mix that took it from, okay, yeah, we got great sounding, well recorded tracks that have got good energy, like good performances. Now, what were the things that kind of took it up a notch and made it ready for release?
Yeah.
And speaking of release, this is now available on Spotify, iTunes. It's out everywhere, right?
Everywhere. Any sort of platform that you can use or access music on, you will find it there.
Nice. And
one further point I just really quick want to make, where we were just jumping off of about the editing, mixing. I kind of learned a long time ago that sometimes if you're simply in editing mode, that you may be inclined to over edit, because once you kind of get into mix mode and you kind of balance things and things actually find more of their place, then some things that may have not felt comfortable in a different balance, different context, don't actually need editing. So it's like so I kind of like to, there's certain jobs that are obvious, like when you're comping vocals. I mean, you're not mixing while you're comping vocals, like big editing jobs.
Yeah.
But just it's like if you feel like something maybe is like 10% away from, and I don't mean just the drums or whatever. I mean like the whole track, maybe 10% away from the editing being done. I like to start mixing, because sometimes maybe 10 or 15, 20, 50% of that 10% goes away.
Right? It just kind of magically disappears into the mix of like, oh, actually that wasn't that important. Like you don't notice it ever again.
Right.
Yeah.
It helps it feel vibey, and human, and just kind of, inspired to me. Mixing, transferring over to where we headed with the mixing, it's, what we were listening to when we left off was a kind of a static balance, a rough mix, if you will. And it did sound good. But what happens in the, when you get to the mix stage, you start adding compression on combined things. Like, so when you get to the mix, it's like the bass, the bass, you got a DI and an amp sim, right? The B15 Ampeg sim. Those get bussed together. And then you put a little bit of more compression. You put compression on the combination. You put EQ on the combination. It starts to, solidify the individual elements, and add a little bit more of that volume and dynamic control, and opening EQs up. So that's it did already sound good, but then mixing, you get into that world of like where you got some parallel compression going on in the drums, and which I know you're going to lead us through the way the ad-lib vocals work within the vocal mix bus and all those types of things.
Well,
and that's that's what really, that's where you can that's where it really starts to, not only are you controlling the dynamic and getting that balance, but the tone and the volume and everything is also coming up, and shaping the transients and getting the tone to all kind of fit together, and because as we'll see that we talked, as we'll see on the drum bus, there's a little bit of EQ before the drum compression, and there's a little bit after, and we can talk about why. And just little things about like that make they're small gestures, but they really do bring it all together, I think.
Yeah. So when you're starting a mix like this, obviously, as you mentioned, you've been listening to this song through the tracking process, through the some of the editing aspects of it. So then when you go to mix, do you break it back down and kind of build it back up, or do you just start with everything as it is and then continue to just kind of go to wherever your ear leads you? Or is there more of start with the drums or start with the vocals? Is there some sort of process that you follow?
Yeah, I mean, there's a general process with the stuff I'm working on. I mean, with other stuff that I'm working on sort of end to end versus like something I've been given to mix from someone else. But it all kind of generally starts the same, where I have a static basic balance,
Mm-hmm.
and then I start with the mix bus.
Gotcha.
And I start with a mix bus, and I'll put, typically my thing is I'll start with an EQ,
Mm-hmm.
and then some sort of more normal traditional mix bus compression. I use the SSL, G bus a lot.
Yep.
And then I'll go into, sometimes I'll use a tape emulation or a transformer emulation, some sort of color,
Mm-hmm.
tonal thing, and then sort of a final stage
Yeah.
where there's, some stereo width, spectral enhancement, limiting, and something that I can set like a final level on. I've gotten into now these days setting it to -1, so I get all that kind of stuff going.
Yep.
And also, like a good indicator for me generally is I know if I have the threshold on the SSL all the way up,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's all the way up, when the kick drum and the snare drum and things just start to just touch, you see just a touch of gain reduction.
Yep.
It's like, okay, I have my static balance
Mm-hmm.
is kind of at that point where it's at a sweet spot to hit that compressor, and I'm going to get a lot of good volume through the rest of the mix bus process.
Yeah.
And just start to do things like, open up the top end EQ a little bit, maybe cut out a little bit of subs, get those things working first. And then, typically, then you start going and you build like, what's the bus for the bass instrumentation? What's the bus for the drum? Like, sort of have a template, that you can kind of get brought in and start establishing those things.
Yep.
And then, I don't spend a lot of time like just listening to just the bass. It's like I try to work on, once I get the mix bus going, I just try to work on the whole thing a little bit.
Yep.
To get it to speak well in the mix bus. And then, sometimes, as opposed to soloing at the drums or the bass, I'll turn off elements. Like I'll turn off all the background vocals.
Yep.
Maybe turn the lead vocals off for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of break it down, like shrink it down, but not solo things so much. I only really solo stuff if I feel like I've really got to get in there and find whatever it is that I need to address, and then get out of it. So kind of work, top down, I guess, if you will, from the mix bus stage back into all the elements.
Yeah.
And then, because the thing is you have to revisit the drums many times, typically.
Mm-hmm. Right. You do like a first pass on it. You're like, yeah, I'm feeling it. And then go off and work on something else. And then you come back. You're like, I need some more kick drum. Or like, then you hear something else that you want or need. So you kind of round robining through it helps so much. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I think oftentimes a very common mix comment that you will get is, can the snare drum be fatter?
Mm-hmm.
Can the snare drum be louder? It's just like, it's just these little things, because, the thing is you get kind of used to the way the drums sound.
Yeah.
And you get kind of used to it. So you not as, it's not speaking to you as loudly maybe. Like the brightness of, say, some guitar parts or keyboard part, it will affect the perceived brightness of the snare drum.
Mm-hmm.
So once you kind of get those things, other elements happening, you got to go back and visit those things. Even when I don't know how long it was, a week ago or so, when I shared the mix with you and just like, hey Ben, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
You said, I wonder if the kick drum could be just a little bit punchier. And it's just like, oh yeah, it could be. Good idea. I mean, good point. Good point. And as we'll see, I added the kick drum that we recorded. I thought, it was really punchy, well defined, fit the drum kit really well.
Yeah.
But I kind of knew when we were doing the session that it's just like, it's just a little bit lacking in some of the low oomph.
Mm-hmm.
But I made the decision, is like, it's not gonna break anything. I can address it, and I want to kind of keep the session moving.
Yeah.
I felt like I had spent enough time to get a sound that I was happy with. I knew that I was going to need to do a little bit of extra work to make it the way I wanted to hear it. I ended up adding a 909 sample to give it a little bit of that like really synthetic processed kind of low end. And I, it's just like, so I was kind of hearing it in those two parts, and so, yeah, there was a little bit of a gap in what the 909 was providing in terms of the really deep subby low end and what the recorded kick drum track was.
Mm-hmm.
And, your comment sort of like pointed my attention to the fact that like, oh, I gotta marry those two just a little bit more. But, so all that, it's kind of a tangent there, but, you have to mix. I start with the mix bus, and you kind of got to go visit. You start with the rhythm section, get the low end working, get the harder hitting dynamic things like the kick and the snare
Mm-hmm.
present and working, and then build from there.
Nice. Well, yeah, man, so many good things in there, and so many, it's such good affirmation for me, because you're doing so many of the things that I've been doing as well, of like using the SSL as my, like, all right, am I in a good spot? Sweet. The kind of, mix, go away, do something else, come back, revisit it. Something else that I do a lot that really seems to help with that is, that's a good point to listen to your references, right? To like, just check out, listen to it, put on another record for 30 seconds or whatever, just to hear like, especially if your client is, if you're working with a client and they're asking you to like, hey, I want this to sound like Rage Against the Machine, or I want this to sound like, Soundgarden. Like, you want to go back and listen to those for a moment, be like, all right, are we in the right ballpark here? All right, great. Now keep on moving. Like, there's a lot of good ways to kind of reset your ears and make sure like, am I just enjoying this because I've been working on it for 30 minutes straight, or is it actually going to fit into the real world too?
Yes. Yeah. And I think now, it can be Achilles heel if you listen to that stuff too much and you try to make too direct of a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like bigger gestures, like, how loud are the guitars? How's the snare? Like, how bright is the snare?
Yep.
But then the thing is, you got to keep in mind, and the reason you go round and around in your own mix into all the elements is that, how much brightness maybe you put on the keyboards or the guitar, or how bright you let the vocal be, or how much cymbals you have in your drum mix. It's just like, if there's a lot of cymbals in the drum mix, right,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to need to brighten up the guitars a pretty decent amount to keep up with it and compete with it and sort of sound the same.
Yeah.
But then you might end up just with an overly bright mix.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like good to have that reference to sort of like, okay, well, how bright should the drum kit be so that the guitars are an appropriate tonal balance and they marry together well, so it's not dark or not tearing your head off with treble,
Mm-hmm.
all these things. And that's why you kind of have to keep going around. I mean, a lot of times what happens to me in a mix is one of the last things that I put kind of a final touch of EQ on is the bass.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes what happens is, you give the bass enough brightness to be articulate and kind of cut through, but as you kind of define some other things that happening, that the bass starts to lose its articulation and in the balance of things. It's like sometimes you have to change the frequency of where you've brightened it for it to continue to speak well.
Uh-huh.
It's not necessarily about turning it up. It's like, it's really close. That's the frequency, like that 3.5K or that 6K is what really helps the bass speak. But okay, that 6K, if I got the 6K boost on the bass, the guitars are kind of there too. So maybe just moving the bass down to like 5K.
Yeah.
Helps. It's not necessarily let's turn up more 6K.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, just make those refining choices.
Dude, that's so refreshing to hear. Like that's a really good counteraction to our intuition of like, oh, I need this to be brighter. Let me just add more. What you just said, I hope everyone just heard that, because man, sometimes changing the frequency that you have it set at, like your first intuition was probably, yeah, it might have been right, it might have been good, but now in the context of where everything else is going in the mix, sometimes it's not about giving it more, it's about kind of changing where its focus is.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of times when I'm getting to the final stage of refining a mix, it's like I've made a lot of good EQ choices. And they're suitable for the individual, things like the bass, the kick, the snare, the vocal, whatever. But as it all starts to fit together, it's just like, that's really close. But just like if I just move it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of what happens with like the EQ, the subtle EQ that's on the drum bus post the compression.
Yeah.
It's like we'll take it in and out, and it doesn't like dramatically change the sound of the drums, but it adds clarity to the other elements. because it's taking away a little bit of the sound of the drums that is this kind of dominating or is just a little bit too much to let other things kind of speak in and around it. It doesn't hurt the drum sound, doesn't really dramatically change the drum sound, but it lets other things speak.
Yeah. Well, Jacquire, man, we've been sitting here teasing people. We've been talking about the song for so long. Let's play some of the music. Let's play some of the song, and then we'll dive in and kind of show people what's up in here.
Sure.
So I've got also some really good news in case you guys haven't seen already. There's a new update for Luna that just dropped. Like, I just saw the Slacks coming in that there's Luna 1.1.2 was just released this morning. So it's one of the small updates, but it has. I'm gonna take credit for it. We can now duplicate without duplicating audio. So if you want to duplicate a track to, if you're vocal comping or you just want to, hey, let me do another take on top of that guitar. Option Shift D is your new favorite key command to take a track, duplicate its settings, but not bring its audio with it. So that's up and out. You guys should be able to download that inside the app. In the session that we're going to be showing off here today, Side Hustle by K Club, this is going to be up in the app. It should be up there by tomorrow. Obviously, with so many things going on at the same time, it's not going to be in the app this morning, but it should be in there by tomorrow, Thursday at the latest. But with no further ado, let me pull up the session here. I'll play you guys here from the top. Take us to the chorus. I'll kind of cruise around the session a little bit, and then we've got some topics that we can discuss in depth. If you guys have got questions in the chat, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll try to keep my eye on there and pull out some questions if you got anything that you want to see us touch on in particular. But yeah, let's enjoy some music.
Three-point senders came to silence all pretenders. Now I earn my keep, grinding in my sleep. I'm counting dollar signs while y'all counting sheep. Seeping through the cracks, I'm deep up in these tracks. 3 steps ahead while y'all 2 steps back. Come on, follow the vision. The kids on a mission. No time for indecision. Where the headline is sitting, conquer and divide. Take it all in stride, keep it going on the side. Hustle till I die, hustle till I die. Hustle, hustle till I die. Hustle till I die, hustle, hustle till I die. Now I keep it in style, both sides of the dial. Left, right, over your head, and all the while I'll be reading books in Portuguese and drinking with a smile. Living out your wildest fantasies while you still in denial. I keep it on the level, roll dice with the devil. Your lines be lightweight, but I'll be dropping heavy metal. I never be settled, always staying on my toes. 2 things at once, that's me, taking it slow. Come on, you know by now, I got irons in the fire. Net under net while I'm walking on the wire. Conquer and divide, take it all aside, keep it going on the side. Hustle till I die, hustle till I die, hustle, hustle till I die. Come on. And it goes like this. You know I don't miss. And it goes like this. Hustle till I die, hustle, hustle till I die, hustle till I die, hustle, hustle till I die, hustle till I die, hustle, hustle till I die, hustle till I die, hustle, hustle till I die, 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 hustle till I die And it goes like this. You know I don't miss. And it goes like this.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Jacquire,
I
man,
love it.
dude, this rocks.
Thanks, man. We had a blast doing it. We had a blast, and it's. I love that it's like 2 minutes and like 40 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
man, there's so much cool stuff going on here. I'm seeing some some good comments in here. People asking about how do you get the low end to sound so good. Sorry, my computer's a little slow here. So we're asking about the low end, asking about the drum punch, how to get that vocal sound. So much emulation. Have 2-inch. Yeah, people wondering about all the tape on here as well. Wicked.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I think
What do you want to talk? What do you want to talk about first? I would say the tape. I mean, yeah, I got tape. I mean, it's just a standard Studer setting on all the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
What I've gotten into now that there's the master bus tape on the ATR, I have found it really useful on my vocal buses. I haven't, it's not that I won't or will, it's not that I won't or don't like it on the mix bus. I just,
It's so convenient having it on all on like vocal bus, right? Like being able to go in and kind of round off individual things like that.
Yeah, that's what I find it really, really useful for, is that it makes the job of my compression, like the utilization of compressors, a little bit easier to dial in, because you're getting that tape, a little bit of the tape, saturation and transient control, and just kind of the gluing together that it does. And obviously there's the Studer that's on the individual tracks, but having the vocals combined yet again through a different style of tape machine, just really, it's been really, really crucial, and I've been loving it lately.
So now, when you set it up, do you go in there and do you tweak the settings inside the Studer every time you pull it up, or do you kind of have a preset that you're going to each time?
No, I mean, no, since using Luna, I really haven't gotten as tweaky with the individual settings on the Studer. I basically, most of the time, what I do is I just flip through all the different tape formulas. And I think most often I'm ending up these days on the GP9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really play with anything typically other than the very basic top level, choices like tape formula, tape speed, and tape elevation.
Yeah.
But I typically I'm using it most of the time as we see it here. I like the noise feature on.
Mm-hmm. I noticed. I noticed.
Yeah.
There's a nice little. There's just a nice little constant, but man, that makes it feel. It gives it that classic. That man, studios used to be kind of noisy, like in that sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, if it's a problem, you can. There's ways around it. You can turn the noise off and print the section you need without the noise. Like if pretty much it's really only. And I didn't do it on this song, but if it's a drag in the beginning or end of the song, it's just like print the head and the tail of the song without it, and then you cut them together, and you're in the clear.
Yep.
So, but it's just like the sound, the behavior of the sound is so good to me with the noise on. It sounds like the real thing. It's what I want to hear. It's I mean, to some ears maybe it's subtle, but to me it makes all the difference. Things behave the way I want them to, and sound the way I want them to.
Well, it's almost like an analog dither, right? It kind of gives you're giving yourself a bit of a floor. You're giving it just this little bit of snow to kind of pepper on top of everything.
100%.
Nice. So yeah, GP9, 15 ips, and I'm kind of with you on that, man. Like the more I'm using this, the more I just kind of come in here quickly, like scroll through the different tape types, and then if one feels a little bit stronger than the other, it's cool. Just leave it and then move, and then keep on moving. It kind of similarly to how you would do it in the real world, right? It's kind of a set and forget sort of thing where you buy your reel tape, you record onto it. That it's there. Like there's no choosing midway through to change your tape type unless you want to go back to the beginning.
Totally. I mean, and it's nice that the saturation knob, like, is there right there, big and bold, right in the middle of every channel on the where the tape emulation is inserted. Because sometimes I've noticed this with like acoustic guitars, if they're recorded really hot, that they really start to make the tape kind of waffle and kind of oversaturate.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to have that control. Occasionally, I mean, I didn't do it in this session, but occasionally I'll kind of crank up the saturation on like a drum like a drum track or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you just kind of want a little bit more grit that wasn't on the recording, you know, you can kind of, you know, you want more or less of it, you can kind of manage it really quickly right there, which is also a very super cool feature.
Oh yeah. Well, let me solo up the drums and bass together. I think this might be a good place to start. And then we'll kind of break it down from here. Let me pull it forward into like let's see, I guess like the B section, or a little bit of the A section into a little bit of the B section. So people are wondering about the low end. That's because it's this growly, gnarly kind of bass sound, and so it's, a lot of that's in the track, right? That it was tracked with that tone in mind. And as I remember, he was using some pedals as well for some of that grit, right?
Yeah, Josh. Yeah, Josh had some overdrive distortion type things going on his pedal board, and then we ran the so on my end in the control room, I was kind of running some stuff that kind of adds a little bit of its own personality and grit to it. And we used the Ampeg B15. It's kind of got a little bit of a saturation sound going on to it as well. So we're kind of accumulating a little bit of grit and aggression through the process. But yeah, definitely straight from Josh's pedal board. It's already, we were using the Sans amp as well out in the room. So there's overdrive on the pedal board. The Sans amp's got a little bit of grit in it. The amp simulation's got a bit of grit in it. I'm pushing my record pads just a little bit, and then we've got tape emulation on it, and then it's just
it's a little sprinkle all along the way, right?
All along the way, yeah. And then using the DBX 160, I wouldn't say that gives it a distorted sound, but the way that it treats its transients, it kind of does give it plays really well to that attitude anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the cool things that when you guys download the session that you'll be able to do is you'll notice as soon as I record enabled this bass amp track, Luna remembers the settings that you guys used when you tracked this. So I hooked it up to one of my high Z inputs, so automatically loaded up Ampeg and the unison slot with the DBX 160 and the Harrison EQ that you used when you tracked this live. So what's really cool about this is if you guys want to get in there and explore the tones and be able to kind of maybe use some of these ideas for yourself, you can do the similar sort of thing. So this is like the DI track. So again, I just assigned it an input on my system because my inputs are different than Jacquire's inputs. So I assigned it to one on my rig, and you can see now the bass DI pulls up the Neve 1084 settings that you used when you tracked it. And again, using the DBX 160 into the Harrison EQ for that track as well. I
think this is really cool. I mean, people at home can just plug their bass in, and they plug their bass into these settings and kind of get a little bit of a working understanding of how how these sounds kind of came to be.
Absolutely. And this is this is the reason why you and I are both loving working inside of Luna, right? Is like this stuff is stored inside the session, but then most importantly, as soon as we're done recording, when I unrecord enable that track, it releases those plugins from DSP. So it's Luna's dynamically, adding these to DSP, getting you the low latency monitoring with ARM mode, and then as soon as you're done tracking, cool, here you go. Here's all your horsepower back to focus on the mixing side of things. And then of course 2 months later, the bass player calls you up like, oh hey man, like I messed up a note in the in that B section. Can I come back and punch it in? You can tell them, dude, it doesn't matter. But then I guess if they're paying the bills, sure. We can totally redo that, and you have the exact same settings already dialed in.
Yeah, your documentation is lives with the session.
I know, right?
From moment of capture. Yeah, it's awesome.
So I'm curious. So we looked a little bit at the tracking chains, and of course, when you guys get the session, you can open these up and really get your fingers dirty inside the session, kind of exploring everything. But I want to look at the bass bus because this is now this is your mixing process, right? This is you taking the two tracks, busting them together, feeding it through the Neve summing. Again, just it's going through the Neve. It's not like you have to sit here and really tweak on it super hard. But then you're following it up with some more DBX 160. Excellent choice. The subsynth, this is what I really want to ask you about, and then a little bit of EQ here using the Pro Q3. Looks like you're giving 0.7 of a boost at 67, 1.3 cut at 190, and a little bump at 5.5. This is just kind of a little shape, right? It's just a little more bump, a little less mud, and a little bit more presence.
Yeah, just a little bit tightening up, a little bit sweetening of EQ. Typically, if I've recorded the sounds that I want, that's kind of like where I'm at. It's like if I need to do more heavy lifting, I will. But it's like I've kind of carefully balanced the DI and the amp sound. So yeah, it's just not a lot of heavy EQ is needed, and you're generating so much, not only from the record pads, but it's got the Studer tape emulation, you've got the Neve bus. It's just like you just kind of
you've already added a lot of tone.
There's so much color. There's so much color going on. It's just like it's and the DBX 160. I mean, I know I use DBX 160 on the track, like as a tracking compressor, but then and you can see if you hit play, it's just like it's just touching it a little bit. I'm not like heavily compressing it, but I'm using the DBX 160 again to kind of marry the two individual, like the two elements of the sound together and kind of get them to compress and then work together. That's part of what really helps finish a mix, is blending things through bus compression and general treatments together.
Dude, you guys are going to see this throughout the whole session, right? It's kind of bust things together, have them push into a compressor together. It's that joint effort of like, cool, now the bass, my two individual bass tones, my DI and my amp, now they're going to work together, and you don't have to go crazy. Like none of the, you're going to notice pretty much none of these are going nuts. Like you're not slamming buses together. You're not over compressing any of these elements, but it's just getting them to talk together and come out as a individual thing. You add the basses together, add the drums together. Now you add all of those together on the mix bus. Like it's, this is kind of the process of mixing, right? It's blending together and getting all the different elements to perfectly sit next to each other.
Totally. I mean, we probably see the heaviest compression on the drum bus and the vocal bus. When we get there, but then especially on the drum bus, it's a there's a blend. It's not just full on compression.
Yeah. So this subsynth, man. So tell me a little bit more about this one. It looks like this is kind of just a thing to kind of boost in some of that low end, right?
Yeah, I just was wanting to get a little bit, just get a little bit of, because when you just a little bit more of the sub synth, kind of tie the bass instrument sonically to the 808s that were added, the 909 that was added to the kick drum, and just kind of get it to just a little bit deeper. I mean, a lot of what Josh is playing, because it's really punctuated and some of it's kind of up the neck, it doesn't have some of that like real deep end, low end, which is totally fine. But just a way to kind of to bring that out. I love this tool. It sounds so transparent and good, and you can it's simple to use, but super flexible too. And you can just kind of dial in a little bit of like subharmonic, subsonic frequencies to sort of help, not harmonic, but subsonic frequencies to accentuate.
Nice. Well, let's let me play back that same section here, and I'll take just the subsynth in and out, and I'll also play with the DBX 160. You guys may notice my system's lagging a little bit today, running Zoom and streaming and a heavy duty session. So if you don't see some of these meters moving, just know that it's me. It's not you.
Listen, you'll hear it though. You'll hear
it. Exactly. Surprise, surprise. Let's use our ears together today. So here, I'll play back that same section. I'll kick these in and out so you guys can hear what effect these are having together with the drums. Oh yeah. Dude, all right. So the subsynth, holy crap! That it literally does add that perfect amount of extra warmth and kind of thumpiness to it. And then the 160, it almost has like this high mid. It's a little bit of a presence adder, right?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying, alluding to before when we were talking about the distortion, like the accumulated distortion and stuff. It's like it's not adding distortion, but it just the way that it controls the dynamics and signal, and that that it kind of because it's a VCA style compressor,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really kind of aggressive. Yeah, it just really accentuates those upper mid range. It kind of brings out the attitude, which is just I mean, it's just like killer. It's like one of the holy grail compressors for bass.
Oh, absolutely. Nice. All right, so that's the bass, but now we've been listening to this along with the drums. So the drums, you guys will notice, if you'll remember this from tracking. So there's the kick, snare, overheads. There's a drum fill overdub, I believe, a Flea 47, the NS10, which was not in its normal. As I remember, this wasn't in its normal, just right in front of the kick drum spot, right? This was you had the NS10 in a different.
Yeah, it was behind Logan, kind of down below the drum throne.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of pointed at the kit, but from kind of behind the drummer Logan.
Nice, yeah. I'm always so used to seeing those like right in front of the front kick drum head, right? So it's cool to see it capture a little bit more of a complete picture of the drums.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually it being sort of, it's kind of looking primarily at the kick drum. It's getting a bit of it's getting a kit sound,
Mm-hmm.
but the low frequency, that develop in that distance are also kind of a real, they support the kick drum in kind of the same way, like with those subby kind of frequencies that you get when you put it on the front of the kit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, I like the way it fills it out a little bit better because it's a little bit more holistically related to the drum kit, and that low frequency stuff reinforcement that you get also just has a little bit of air around it.
Yeah.
It just feels a little bit more natural. It's almost, I use it that way. I got into using it that way because it feels like that sensation, like when you're in the room with the drums and you stand in that certain spot in the room where you're a bit away from it,
Mm-hmm.
and the low end kind of there's a low end bump and you kind of feel that thump and the movement in the room.
Yeah.
It's giving me a little bit of that element to blend in with the kit.
Absolutely. And so now, and then there's the drum dirt, which, as you guys will see, there's there's two tracks in here. There's one with parentheses tracking, and you may see this a few times in the session. So these were effects that you were running into live when we were tracking, right?
Yes.
So this way, the musicians, what they're hearing not just their mics, but they're also hearing, let's see, you can scroll down here and see. So, like the kick, the main elements of the kit were also being fed, and a lot of the Flea and a lot of that NS10 being run into the raw plugin, so giving it some serious distortion. And then this is such a cool trick for really amping up performers, right? For really getting them hyped about what they're hearing, because they're getting it back, but they're getting it back with this extra energy and this extra grit. So the drums kind of are matching that bass kind of grit and growl, right?
Absolutely.
And so what you'll see is, so the tracking one, this is what they were listening to live. And then Jacquire, this is something that I noticed you do a lot. You like to print your effects. You like to commit things like that to audio. What's the thought process behind that?
Well, I guess it's there's a few aspects to it. Number one, the number one reason that I printed the drum dirt track is that for DSP management, because I wanted to use that same kind of style of distortion energy for the vocals when Spencer was doing the vocals.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't, you can't have too many things running virtual.
Okay.
So I printed the drum performance that to that and committed it so that I could free up some DSP resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, the idea of committing to something and kind of it's part of the sound, it's part of the recording, and I'm I'm not really thinking about really tweaking it anymore, because it's like I decided on a sound I like, I committed it, and I printed it. It's not like something that's sitting there running virtual that I want to keep going back to and fiddling with.
Yeah.
So, and also part of it is, it's just like I've been making records for a while now, and before we had as many amazing tools we have now, the studio was a lot simpler of an environment, and you didn't have the ability to have unlimited tracks of everything.
Yeah.
And it's just like you had to commit that one resource that you were using. You had to like record it to the tape, because it's like you want to go on and maybe use it for something else.
Right. Most studios only had one LA2A or one or two 1176. Like, you had a limited amount of resource to use it, so you're well versed in the no fear commitment sort of thing, right? And also the fact that like this is the sound that inspired the musicians when they were tracking, meant there's something there. So it is kind of nice to just have that committed, just like their performances are.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that there's a subconscious element to it too. It's just like, once I've made the decision to print that, I'm not really thinking about anything other really than the way it balances and blends in with the drums. It may be subconscious, but it's like I've kind of eliminated the opportunity for me to go back there and fool with it. It's just like, if I really want to change it, then it's like, okay, I've got to go through the process of reactivating all those sends, pulling that virtual track up, and like making the tweak and all that. It's just like, it's like, okay, well, is it, I mean, of course I would do that if I felt like it was necessary, but just like some sort of like inkling wondering, it's just like, you're probably just, you just maybe make an EQ adjustment.
Which is exactly what you did. Like, you just came in here, you added a little, you just made a little cut at 900, rolled off some of that low end, and like, yeah, you can make adjustments to it. But again, you're right. Like, you've got the ability, if you really were like, man, I need that to be less distorted, or I need it to be way more distorted. You have the freedom to go back and get to it. It's not like you're locked out of giving, tweaking that. But as long as you've got committed, why not just build off of that?
Yeah, totally.
Nice. So then for the drums, so you've got drum reverb. So this is the Ocean Way, which you've got assigned basically just the snare, and the 909 snare, which is a snare sample, are being sent into the Ocean Way. And then everything, all the drums, including the drum reverb, are all going into the drum bus. And so on the drum bus, it looks like you've done a little Pro Q3, a little cut at like 500 here into the distressor, which we'll talk about, and then you followed the distressor up with another EQ. So let me play this section for you guys here, so you can hear what it is. I'll switch the distressor in and out so you can see what that's doing, and then let's break down why it is that there's an EQ before and after, as well as some of the settings that you chose here on the distressor. Talk about night and day, right? Yeah. Like, dude, it's like literally turning the lights on in the room. So, I mean, this is what the distressor does, right? This is, as I mentioned, my gain reduction meters are being a little funky today, but you can undoubtedly hear the effect that this is having. And when you pull this up in your guys' own system, you'll be able to see and get in here. And this is what I really hope you guys are doing with these sessions, is opening them up, checking out the settings, but then getting in there and try tweaking it around a little bit, try playing with it, and see learn these sweet spots, and kind of learning to really understand the relationship between all the settings on these, because that, this is decades of experience for Jacquire to instinctively pull up the distressor and dial stuff like this in. So yeah, do you mind walking us through kind of how do you approach the distressor and kind of dialing in drum compression like this?
Well, I use the compressor in varying ways. Sometimes I'll use it like on the nuke setting when I really want, when I've got maybe a kit that is even a little bit cleaner and more dynamic than the one I recorded. It's like I compressed some things on the way in. I know that I compressed the snare. I might have put a little something on the kick drum. So there's Yeah, there's already, and the Flea 47 definitely had a healthy amount of, I think I used the Fatso on it, so it's already had a pretty healthy amount of stuff. So just looking for something that kind of brings the dynamic, squishes the dynamic down,
Mm-hmm.
adjust the attack time to where it's letting the transient speak enough
Yeah.
to kind of keep it dynamic and punchy feeling, but then that it starts to sit on the sound. I mean, I know that the visual representation is not really working very smoothly right now off your computer, but it did kind of freeze on where you could see, like, I think I had like close to 8 to 10 dB of compression on the drums,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm hitting it pretty hard. I chose the 6-to-1 ratio on this just because I flipped through them all because it just sort of felt like it was the right sort of ratio to sit on the sound and kind of control the sound in the way that I wanted.
Yeah.
If, like, let's say for example, that if I had maybe used more compression on the way in and I had already had more dynamic control
Mm-hmm.
in the recording, I probably would have used a lower ratio, like 3-to-4, like I'm a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1. And like I just said a moment ago, so it's like if it has even more dynamic, I might have gone up to like the nuke setting.
Yeah.
Now, if you get into the nuke setting, you've got to be you're going to have a really slow attack, pretty slow attack. You're going to end up somewhere around the 8 on attack,
Mm-hmm.
and a pretty fast release, like 2 or 3. And that depends on the room tone and the tempo of the song and the part for how fast you want those things to operate.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of got some medium settings here, and it's just like drive the input to the place where you get the right amount of compression, and then the output is really about like getting back to the relative level that I had with my static balance before I added the compression.
Yeah.
You know,
Which always will, especially with stuff like this, you guys are gonna notice it feels like it's elevated, right? It feels like it's a couple dB louder, but really what's happening is you're compressing, you're bringing the softer information, you're bringing it more forward. It's like the room tone, the decay of the drums, you're really kind of lifting those up to match the top transients of the kick and the snare. So like when you hear this, you'll notice like the kick and the snare kind of stay in the same spot. The top end of their transients are essentially the same level, but the overall loudness of it has been brought forward. And that's what you were talking about this earlier. That's kind of what you're doing in the mix, right? Is you're kind of giving everything this push forward and a little bit brighter, a little bit louder, a little bit more exciting. Like that's a lot of what you guys are gonna see inside this mix session is elements that are bringing things forward in the mix.
Yeah, tonally bringing up the lower level information, like you said, the detail of the room, and just the tones kind of hang on a little bit longer,
Mm-hmm.
like the sustain of notes and percussive elements. Yeah, and it's just and then you just finding that sweet spot of ratio on the mix knob of like wet to dry,
Yeah.
of like this is. There's a pretty decent amount of compression that's blended in here, but
Mm-hmm.
but I'm able to do it because the attack time is not overly fast. It's pretty well timed to be kind of letting everything speak really well, because it's slow enough to let the proper amount of the transients through, so that you kind of bringing up that lower level that information of like where you hit the drum and you got this really loud start to it, and then you've got the tone that's happening, and then the sustain as it falls away. The compression is primarily working in the sort of the secondary transient area through the sustain, and then kind of like getting that stuff to speak a little bit better. It's like, perfect point about the observing the kick and snare level in terms of the way it functions in the mix, not really changing significantly. It does a little bit, obviously, but yeah. And I didn't need to. I experimented with the filters, like the high pass filter and the peak on the detection circuit. None of that stuff seemed necessary. And I very rarely use like on the drums, you wouldn't use the high pass filter on the audio section.
Yeah.
Because then
If you want to lose all the low end of your kick, maybe. Yeah.
And typically, in a situation like this where we have we've got the sound of the Neve bussing, we've got the tape emulation, those distortion setting, the second and third order distortion, probably, they're not necessary. They're basically there to give you
that same sort of warmth, right?
Yeah. Dave built those into the distressor to kind of give you those analog tones to have available in there. That's one of the things that makes this compressor such an amazing tool. Just like those are options there, but I didn't even play with them because I've got all that color happening throughout the structure of Luna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, man, and the distressor, this is, as a lot of people in the chat are like, this is kind of like the must-have. It's one of the go-tos, right? It's just like, talk about.
You have to like you're not going to be able to make a modern recording if this is like, okay, so like, Universal Audio is responsible for, at least two of the handful of great compressors that have been made in the history of recording.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those handful. Yeah. It is probably the best modern designed compressor there is, and it is very much a part of what modern music sounds like. So you've got to have one.
Right, like all of our favorite records from 80s, 90s, 2000, like every this has been on so many records.
Yes, I think it's like sometime in the 90s, Dave. I guess it would have been around 95, 96 when this came out.
Yeah,
the hardware piece.
Dude, it's ingrained in our collective sonic memory of the sound. And man, what's really cool about it is if there's a good compressor if you only ever going to use one, this would probably be a really good one to pick, like Desert Island style, because it's so flexible. Like you have anywhere from a short to a fast release, and something like the 1176. It's got attack release controls, but that attack control is like super duper mega fast and still really, really fast. Like right, you got two different flavors of fast on 1176, whereas the distressor, you've actually got a wide range. You've got that super duper fast over here at 0, but then you can actually open it up, between 5 and 10 and let a lot of transient information through. Similarly with the release, you can get a really fast pumping release at 0, or you can go, kind of let it hang out and let it be nice and slow. So yeah, just the balancing act between your ratio, your attack, your release, your gain staging with the input and the output, the fact that you have, you can filter the sidechain detector circuit, you can filter the audio and add some harmonics to it. It's just like, there's so much going on in one thing, and to boot, it sounds absolutely fantastic. And now, with the UAD version, you've got the mix knob, which you unfortunately didn't have this in real life. You'd always have to use use another channel or two on the console to be able to do a parallel thing. And now you can just run it straight as an insert on your channel and control that balance.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there's no other compressor that has as wide of a ranging timing on the attack and release as a distressor. I don't know of one that has.
Yeah, I don't mean either. Yeah, I can't think of one.
It's kind of like it's the Swiss Army knife of compressors. Now, tonally, it's awesome, but it's not it's up there. But it's like it's a necessary tool. I mean, it's just like you got to have an 1176, you got to have a distressor. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about this EQ move, because as people will see, like there's an EQ before the distressor and then also an EQ after. And they're both just making these kind of subtle cuts. So why would you use why not just put this all into an EQ either before the compressor or after? What's the different action happening between these two sides?
Well, as we kind of talked about it a few minutes ago, it's just like where I'm really controlling the dynamic and balance and sort of accumulated energy of the drum kit, it's in the sort of the secondary transients and the tonal things and the sustain. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of mid-range involved in that, right? So the EQ prior to the compressor is just kind of clearing out some of this. I mean, it's very subtle, but clearing out some of that boxy mid-range that kind of is because all the elements of the drum kit microphone wise, you just like a thousand cycles is, it's like it's the frequency that our ears hear the best. It's the frequency that microphones seem to pick up the best. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of get a little bit of accumulated that mid range, So I'm clearing up a little bit of that before it goes into compression, because the compression is going to like squish all those things together more and and kind of accentuate it more. And then now, and then should I stop there and you just kind of take that in and out? And
Let's break this down one at a time. So this is the EQ before the distressor. So it's a subtle cut. So make sure you guys are listening on headphones or some good speakers, because we're taking out just over half a dB at 500.
Listen to. Sorry, Ben. Listen to the room tone of the drums and how it relates to the bass. Like when Ben takes it in and out. Don't just obviously we're listening to the drums, and I'm directing your attention to kind of listen to some of the background detail. It's not about the transients. It's sort of like the contextual tones that you kind of a little bit further back in the listening environment, I guess. And then also listen to the way it changes the way that the bass and the drums kind of fit together. Even though this is a subtle change, you will also hear a difference in the way the bass tone speaks with the drums.
Nice. Yeah, here, let's check it out. Man, I hear it so much on the snare drum, right? And you're right.
Exactly.
The snare tone, the length of the snare, it goes from it feels a little not flat. Flat's kind of the wrong word, but it kind of then gives it some more dimension when you add the cut back in there.
When the cut comes in, the snare you hear it's like almost when Logan hits a snare, there's like almost the sound of the snare drum kind of snapping back off the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And that is clear when that EQ is in. And then also on the bass doesn't change dramatically, but it feels a little bit lifeless. It just feels a little staler. It doesn't really feel like it's popping as much when that EQ is out.
Yeah. So then, and this all makes sense very much so, right? Like you're cutting this area that these, like you mentioned, the frequencies kind of accumulate here, and by just leaving some room there, now the distressor, now everything that we're hearing beyond that is now hearing more of what's outside of that kind of muddy mid-range. So that's why you did this cut before it goes into the distressor. So now it's getting slammed, and it's getting that energy, and it's getting that crunch from the distressor. And then you follow that up here with another Pro Q3 that's cutting out just over a dB at around 200. So what's the thinking here, and what's this cut doing for you that you wouldn't be able to do by doing this cut over pre-compression?
So the pre-compression or the pre-EQ to the compression is also kind of affecting the way the attack and release are working, and the context that the compressor is seeing. But so we've asked the compressor to do this job of like smash all these things together.
Yeah.
And it's bringing all these things together, and we're kind of getting this. Like I said, we're addressing the secondary transients and the sustain of things. We're kind of now getting this buildup and this kind of a little bit of muddy sustain that's a little bit lower, as a result of the compression. It's the accumulation of the frequencies that I've cut post compression are a result of the compression. So I have to then do the EQ job after the compressor. If I were to do it before, it wouldn't have the same result. The compressor would behave differently in terms of the way it's addressing the accumulated sound of the drums. It would probably make it sound like, if we cut 200 before the compressor, the room sound would probably sound a little bit more dynamic than it does the way I've got it fixed right now. So I'm kind of letting that sound kind of get accumulated and kind of glue together, and then addressing where it's maybe a little bit too much of a presence after the compression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
does that explain it well? You think?
I think so, because it's influencing. There's a lot of energy at 200, right? And especially with a broad cut like this. This is weight. This is kind of that low mid. It's low to low mid kind of area, right? And there's a lot of energy. And if you take this out beforehand, you're feeding less into the compression. So yeah, let's before we talk too much about it, let me play it for you guys before and after. I'll take the post compression EQ in and out. So let's all kind of listen for the difference here, and really, like Jacquire said, listen to like the kick and the room sound. Listen to how those are affected by this EQ. Dude, it's the same. It clarifies the energy so much for me.
Yes.
Like it makes the drums just overall sound more than the dB clear. It's really weird that these are like such small moves, but I'm hearing them very vividly. Like that, the clarity that this is now giving to the drums. Yeah, it's outsized. It sounds like much more than just a -1 dB at 200, which makes sense, right? Like this is again, we're removing some of this information, so that way the stuff on either side of it jumps out much more. So like I'm hearing the low end of the kick drum getting more pronounced, as well as the top end becoming a little bit more clear, all from just taking away a little bit of around 200.
Yeah, mid-range management and like cutting, like, you know, people are asking early on, like, well, why does the low end sound the way it sounds? It's because the mid-range is managed really well. It's because, you know, our ears and speakers and headphones, everything produces mid-range easier than it produces the extremities. So we have to really be careful to manage and sculpt the mid-range so that because it has the what ends up happening is it because we hear it so much clearer and, you know, it's reproduced so much easier, it kind of ends up masking. It kind of ends up sort of masking the extremities. And so just managing it well and kind of clearing it out lets the extremities speak without having to actually kind of like crank them. You know, it's just like a little bit of just a little bit of management, really. And I mean, I will say about myself that I have very experienced and acute hearing now in terms of how it relates to this type of work. And so, you know, I can very easily identify that, you know, that 200-ish cut is going to get a little bit of that cloudiness out of the drums. It's going to let the more important aspects of the low end related to the kick drum, like 100 and below, speak a little bit better because it's not being masked by similar frequencies that are more dominant to our ears. And it's going to also open up a little bit of space for where the bass has an opportunity to have its sustain heard better.
Yeah, man, we're hitting on so many of the most important aspects of mixing, which is the fact that like everything kind of interacts with the other. You know, so we're here talking about, you know, some cuts on the drums, but yeah, man, it influences how the information that you're now able to hear from the bass. So like, you know, this is again like everything is so interrelated when you're in this mixing process. And you know, and then yeah, it comes down to, you know, obviously having lots of experience and knowing what you want, but then also, you know, kind of feeling the freedom to be like, cool, like, you know, and I'm sure you heard this in a moment, right? I bet for a while you had it set up like this, where you're like, cool, my drums are sounding pretty good. I've, you know, cut a little bit of this mid-range, got the distressor dialed in. You probably enjoyed it for a while like this, and then maybe you were working on the vocals and you heard like something's getting in the way, or the guitars or some other element, right? And then you can always just, you know, the beauty of modern DAWs is that you can just come in here, add another EQ after the distressor, adjust that little bit, and you probably opened up the entire mix by removing a dB of energy out of the drums overall.
Absolutely. You're totally right. That's pretty much exactly what happened. It's like that EQ was not added, you know, as I was getting the drum balance together. That was, you know, that EQ was added, you know, halfway through or towards the end of the mixing process. Once everything is kind of coming together, it's like, oh, I need to pull a little bit of that energy out of the drums. And, you know, it's like, I got to do it post compression because the compression is largely responsible for it being a little bit overbearing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, so we could spend all day talking about some of these subtleties, but something I really want to highlight for you guys too. When you download the session, check out Jacquire's SSL channels for like the kick and snare, because we've just been talking about little 1 dB cuts. When I checked these out earlier, I was like, all right, he's also not. You're also not afraid to make some big moves too.
Mm-mm.
How do you, yeah? How do you balance between these two? How do you avoid from either underdoing things or constantly overdoing things? Like, is there any trick in your
Well,
mind to?
it's my, I think it kind of goes back to the whole philosophy of like, how do you start the mix? It's like, start on the group, make a balance,
Mm-hmm.
do the big stuff, get the drum compression going, get the balance going, get the panning working, get it kind of happening. And then it's just like, then you can kind of see that like, okay, yeah, I still need to cut a lot of garbage out of the kick drum.
Yeah.
And it's like, I need to add a little bit more snap to it, and,
Mm-hmm.
and, it's just like I described earlier, I thought the weight and the like the low punch bottom of the kick drum was a little lacking. So it's just like crank that up. I mean, there's probably, what is that, like 4 or 5 dB of low,
Of like 70, 60, 70. Yeah.
Right.
A huge boost there. And then a big old like minus 10 or 12 cut at 300 ish, with a pretty sharp curve. So like, yeah, you're not afraid to go in there and do some drastic tone shaping, especially on the individual mics.
I mean, and even if we look at, like, if we were to go to the input record path of these, I mean, I also EQ'd fairly, probably fairly heavily, or, on the way in as well, so it's just like don't be deceived that where there are some of these very small EQ changes. Also, so I'm twisting some knobs too on the way in.
Yeah, check this out. So 1084, 160, and then some more Massenburg cuts too.
Right. I mean, so there's a lot of EQ. It's just like it's staged in, it's stepped in. It's not overly done at one particular spot. The more you crank an EQ, the more you introduce phase shift, and and that kind of can start to make sounds messy, and especially like on a multi-mic'd instrument like drums, you start messing with overdoing an EQ on something, and it starts to not only kind of mess with that sound singular on its own, but how it relates to other things too, because most EQs introduce some amount of phase shift to the signal.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's why cuts are superior in terms of frequency management than boosts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you really kind of you got to use your boosts where you need them, right? Rather than if you boost everything and make no cuts, effectively you may get a similar curve out of it, but you're overall kind of coloring the sound in a much stronger way than leaving those flat and cutting out of that mid range.
Yeah, I think it's almost always best to start with like mid range cleanup, cutting. Fit things together, get things fitting together that way, and then use the boosts to sort of accentuate the areas where you need to help things fit together.
Totally, man. I'm every time I pull up a input chain, I get so geeked that like we can go back in time and see, like all I had to do is assign the input on my channel here, record, enable it, and now we're back to checking out your tracking settings alongside this. Like that'll never get old.
Well, this is absolutely one of the things that I am so excited about, in the context of sharing these Luna sessions, is because it's not just like end result mix walkthrough, like how did you EQ it to mix it? That's like so you get a full forensic deep dive on the whole thing here. It's just like it kind of it's just a lot of information out there about mixing and like that whole process. But being able to have this portion of it in the same session that sort of details like, well, how did you even arrive at deciding that should be the sound, or how did you get that sound to start with?
Yeah.
Now you're barely EQing it in the mix. It's like, well,
it was all here. It was on the tracking side.
Right. And so I think really excited to be able to, to share it share that this way.
Absolutely. So let's man, I want to keep moving here. And one of the other things I thought was really interesting about your session, there's I'll say this a few times here, but there's a lot of stuff for you guys to explore, and the session will be available inside the app. Should be up there by tomorrow, Thursday at the latest. So when it is, all you guys got to do is you'll click on this diamond logo here, go to the Discover page. And on the Discover page, you're going to see over here on the right-hand side, there's a a Luna Sessions section where you'll find all the Luna Sessions available for download. So it's going to be up here up top. It's going to take the number one spot from Greaves, which we just debuted like a week or two ago. Of course, there's a song by Atticus Ross, really showing off the Moog Mini Moog. And there's a familiar face at the bottom here, the very first Luna session, which we did together as well with Jacquire, along with Cass McCombs. So all these are free to download for anyone that has Luna. So highly take advantage of this, guys. This is such a good way to get in there, learn about Luna, learn about recording and mixing, and really kind of not just hear us talk about it, but actually be able to get in there and interact with it. It's a whole different thing. It's you can learn a lot by looking at the settings, but you can also learn a lot by getting in there and trying stuff out on your own. It's a great way to audition different compressors and EQs, right?
Put similar microphones on the drums that you observed in the recording of this from the live stream session, and play around with it. It's a kind of such a cool thing. Hey, Ben, I'm going to take a real quick bathroom break. Maybe isn't there a difference in the way that the sessions are, because they can get this full-blown session, but isn't there going to be some skinny sessions too?
Mm-hmm, exactly, yeah. So you guys will notice in the zip file, there's going to be a full the session that we're looking at right now, which is Jacquire's actual session, the one that he submitted to us. So there's going to be some third-party plugins, like you guys have seen me pull up the Fab filter. There's the PSP Vintage Warmer. So there's some third-party plugins that you may or may not have. So there's going to be a version like that. There's going to be a version that's with basically everything is UAD, and anything that wasn't, we'll print those effects for you guys, so you can check out the actual channel as it is. But you won't need any third-party plugins to be able to open that session. And then there's going to be a third version, which should be able to open on a lower DSP system. So we always format those to open on like a quad DSP. And so that way there are three versions: the actual mix, the all UAD version of the mix with stuff committed that you may not own, and then a skinny version that again, some more things are going to be committed, but that way you can open up on just a twin quad setup. So yeah, those three will all be in the zip file, so you'll be able to download it, open those up, and explore it on your own. And wow, Jacquire, super fat. Where is it? Right in the hallway, huh?
Yep.
Nice, man. Well, so one of the other things that I really want to dig into, we obviously could talk about guitars and keyboards for a while too, but man, the vocals, there's a lot going on here there's not a lot of vocal. There's actually, I think there's more vocal effects tracks than there are vocal tracks in this one.
That happens.
That happens, right? So there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on with the vocals, and one of them, the effects. Obviously, let's break those down. But then you guys will also notice in here that there's a lot of automation going on. So I want to touch on both of these. But man, all right. So you've got a micro shift, which is kind of like a stereo width thing going on for the vocal. You've got 2 delays and 2 reverbs. Walk us through what are these different reverbs and delays doing for you?
Okay, well, the micro shift is just because it widens the pitch center, and just kind of it spreads the vocal out just a little bit, so it helps the vocal have a little bit more of a commanding presence in the stereo field in the mix. And then I like to use, so I typically set it up myself up so that I have 2 delays and 2 reverbs. The 2 delays, the first one, delay 1, is typically like a short slap type of delay, like a real quick, like slap echo type of delay. And then the second one is like a longer timed delay. So that, for bigger sections or where I want like a more pronounced echo, then I have that where I can also turn that up, and I set these things up to just have them at the ready. And then the reverb is kind of a similar thing. It's like 2 styles of reverb, because it's nice. It's nice. Maybe I want to have a different sort of reverb feel on the one section to the next.
Yeah. So this kind of gives you variety. It gives you a chance. And you're not being static, right? Like you're not just setting a level into all of these and using that exact same level for the whole song. You're kind of you're using it to help delineate the sections of the song. So like A has this sound, and then maybe it gets bigger and wider for the B section, or vice versa.
Yeah, it sort of helps. It sort of helps, sort of energy shifts and kind of accentuate things, and kind of just add a little bit of spice to the vocals, and it's like, it's oftentimes like in bigger sections of productions, like you want some vocal throws, you want some echoes that you can really hear, like a deliberate repeat, and so just having those at the ready. An interesting thing that I did on this with the EP, the 34, the Echoplex. Sorry, gosh, I couldn't think of what Echoplex. The Echoplex is, because there's you've got the main vocal and then you've got the two ad-lib vocals, right? So they kind of, I was creating a little bit of, the way they're panned, there's a little bit of a spread to that, and there's like this stereo interplay that's happening. Just having the Echoplex coming back and just being in the center, what didn't feel as exciting. So then I took the Cooper Time Cube and just kind of like used it to sort of spread it out just a little bit, so that I was just trying to get the vocals. I mean, obviously they're centric, but just to try to kind of spread it out a little bit and kind of make it like interesting and kind of create depth. And so I put a delay after a delay, but I kept the Cooper Time Cube as it was sort of traditionally designed. I mean, the plugin has a lot of flexibility where you can get into things that the real box didn't have the ability to do. But I used it kind of in its traditional function to just kind of be this very short, interesting sort of vocal or delay spread.
Man, I was skeptical when I saw delay after delay, and then as soon as I opened up the Cooper Time Cube and saw how you had it, so I was like, oh yeah, I got it immediately. Yeah, you're using that to give you this left-right, just a little. You got 2 milliseconds difference between the two sides, and no feed. You guys can see it's got no feedback, just hard pan left-right. It takes this 120 millisecond Echoplex in the middle. It takes that and just gives it a little stereo information. It gives it a little something to get out of the way of the vocal in the middle. That's Absolutely. super smart. And then the Korg SDD.
I've never had a Korg SDD.
Me neither, thankfully.
Yeah.
The SDD digital delay. This thing sounds rad. It looks like it kind of got in mode 1, just kind of played with the time. One thing you guys are probably going to notice in the session, I think we talked about it a little bit during the tracking day as well, but this isn't to a click. This is human. This is human groove right here. So you guys just really use Luna as if it was a tape machine. So you'll notice not everything's locked down to the grid. So with a delay time like this, where you just kind of like scaling it up and down until you got the response back from it that you were looking for, or do you have a different method?
No, exactly. I was just kind of playing with the time until it sort of averaged it into the groove, and it felt like it was moving in a way that felt connected and kind of useful. No, it's not. I mean, the tempo sort of shifts around a little bit in a very human and musical way. I mean, it doesn't feel abrasive or jarring, or doesn't pull you away from the vibe and the groove, but it moves around a little bit. So I played around with it till I found something that kind of fit the average and just kind of spoke well.
Nice.
It's just a feel thing.
Okay, and then for the reverbs, on reverb 1, you're using the capital chambers. Number 4, looks like you pulled the decay down a little bit of a high pass filter, a little bit of pre-delay as well. And then you've got the AMS, which I assume this is kind of doing the shorter ambience kind of thing?
Exactly. It's just like a tile room kind of reflective sort of like first impulse response. It's kind of like a small space, It's almost like singing in the shower kind of thing, where it's not like, it's not going to have like a lot of long tail reverb kind of coming back to you. It's just very reflective, short. You kind of adds a little bit of sparkle and energy without sounding like reverb necessarily.
Nice. Well, let's let me solo up the vocals here so we can hear all this magic sauce that you got going on.
Front and center, spotlight when I enter. The white flag waving, other side surrenders. I be dropping world enders, mind benders, no contenders. 3-point senders came to silence all pretenders. Now I earn my keep, grinding in my sleep. I'm counting dollars.
That's just the slap.
Deep up in these tracks, 3 steps ahead while y'all 2 steps back. Come on, follow the vision. The kids on.
This is the chamber. And then the AMS. So yeah, man, they're all just different little colors, little shades of it. And so what you guys are going to notice is that a lot of this automation information down here is what Jacquire is talking about. So there's kind of a static amount, right? So you're using, it doesn't look like you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you automated the sends. You're automating the returns.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sending a constant amount. So your gain staging into these plugins is constant. So they're always getting information. Then what you're automating throughout the mix to create the different kind of feels. So like that for that B section, bringing in more of that Korg delay, and then for the C section here where there's a little more space between the vocals, accentuating the slap, making some delay moments. So that chord, that longer delay, you can see he's bringing that up. Here, let me zoom in on this for you, so you guys
tail
can.
end of the phrases, yeah.
Mm-hmm, you can see, bringing up the tails, and then overall bringing in that chamber and just letting that kind of swell with the phrasing of the C section here. Let me let's hear the vocals here on this section so you guys can hear what this is like all together.
And it goes like this. You know I don't miss. And it goes like this.
That's pretty cool. So so let's talk a little bit about the automation process for you. So you and I, when we were hanging out yesterday, getting ready for today's session, we talked a bunch about how you like to automate things, and there's some cool stuff that you're doing. So, as you guys can see, there's a lot of points on here. So you're not going in here, you're not clicking around and kind of drawing this in manually. What you were explaining to me yesterday is that you basically, you'll take a fader, put it into touch mode, and then kind of using, staying in this view, so staying in the edit view, you've got the focus channel over here on the left-hand side. And then you're using the touch to essentially just kind of make these moments happen, or kind of ride the fader through a whole section like this, and then when you let go, it goes back to the static mix that you already liked.
Yes. Yeah. So touch is just only kind of updates wherever, when you actually touch the fader and make a move, it writes that and updates whatever whatever volume was there, and then returns to when you let go of the fader, or it returns to the static position, or the previous information that was there. Mm-hmm. As opposed to if you're in latch, when you move the fader, it will stay where you last leave it.
Yeah. So these are probably the two, in Luna, they're kind of the two modes. There's a mode that you may see in other DAWs called write, where it's constantly write. As long as you're playing back, you're writing automation, which it's burned me once or twice. So I used it once or twice, and then always remembered, okay, touch or latch are kind of the two safer ones, because they only really activate when you use them, and the difference between them is what happens when you let go of the fader. So yeah, as Jacquire mentioned, when you do touch, if you let go of the fader, it goes back to where the automation previously was, and if you use it with latch, it's gonna keep automating until you press stop. So let me show you guys what this actually does in real time. So hopefully this is all making sense to you guys, but this is super important to add. As you can see, man, you're using this to just add little micro moves to the lead vocal bus overall. You're using this to automate these effect returns, to create momentum into transitions, and to create moments for the delays to pop out. So this is to me, this is one of the elements that really takes a mix from being in this like, yeah, man, it sounds good, but it kind of stays the same for the whole time, to like, okay, now I'm feeling something when we get to that B section, or okay, now I'm feeling it, pulling things back for a bridge. Like this is where that sort of dynamic development of the mix comes into play.
Yo, 2 steps back, come on, follow the vision. The kids on a mission, no time for indecision. Where the headline is sitting, conquer and divide.
So you can see, it looks like.
Come on, follow the
There we go.
The kids on a mission, no time for indecision. Where the headline is sit.
My system is bugged out. So what you would see is that the red line coming in here, kind of writing that automation as I was doing it. Whereas when I do latch, what it's going to do is it's going to write, and then it will continue writing that all along the way. If your system wasn't bugged out like mine is today. But yeah, man, these two modes. These are kind of. It sounds like this is really where you do a lot of your work and where you do a lot of this kind of customizing each section. And then when it comes to doing vocal rides like this overall, like what is this just kind of like you're listening through it one time and making these moves, or are you kind of going back in there and doing multiple passes of automation up and down?
No, I pretty much do it in a linear fashion. You know, it's like I'll start at the beginning, and I just kind of, you know, I don't go just through and just like one pass. You know, it's like, I mean, if I've nailed it all, which doesn't ever happen, you know, but you know, it's just like I'll automate until I feel like, you know, I haven't turned something up enough, or I turned it up too much, or it's just not right, and then I'll stop, and then I'll either undo the last move and then pick it up, or, you know, sometimes it's like I'll have a move and like 90% of it across a phrase is right, but then there's maybe one word that got too loud. I'll just, you know, I'll let it run, and you know, it's playing it back, and then because I've got in touch mode, I can just grab it for that one little moment and like pull it down and then let go, and it goes back to where it was, and I've just updated the one little piece, and I just start from the beginning and kind of, you know, work my way through and make all the moves. You know, sometimes what happens is I'll run the automation on like a whole verse, and I feel like, yeah, you know, it's like I'm getting a feel for it. I got maybe 70%. I'll just scrap the whole thing.
Yeah.
And start again, as opposed to just trying to fix the 30% that I didn't get. It's just like, I'm almost kind of like, okay, well, I'm kind of like learning the ropes here. And I was like, oh, that phrase starts really loud. I got to pull that down. And then that next phrase is really quiet. You know, it's a real intimate thing. I got to make sure that turn it up, but I got to get out of there before the breath comes, or, you know, whatever. But I just kind of start at the beginning, work my way through it. And then, you know, once I kind of do that, sometimes I'll go back and I'll just listen to the whole thing. And, you know, it's just like, oh, okay, well, that third phrase in the second verse is too loud, or, you know, whatever. And I'll kind
just
of
make the one little tweak.
Make that one little tweak. And then sort of kind of approach it all that way. And there's no necessarily rule about where to start on the automation. Like, you know, sometimes like if you've got a track where the instrumentation is pretty, like the arrangement is not super dynamic and there's not a lot of stuff coming in and out, you know, it's pretty consistent, like the instrumentation plays pretty consistent. Then, you know, I might start with automating the vocal first, you know, kind of to get it to clarify and sit over, or, you know, around all this stuff, how it needs to be. But sometimes if a track is really dynamic and things are coming in and out, it's just like, I've got my static vocal level that works for the track, but then, you know, some things need to be kind of, some of the instrumentation needs to be sort of addressed to sort of fit the mix. I'll start with some of the instrumentation and then do the vocal after. It just kind of depends on what's going on and what needs the most attention. I would say oftentimes, most often I start with some of the more basic instrumentation, and some of the bigger gestures. Then I do the vocal kind of mid-process, and then you know, like some rhythm section stuff, like drums or like guitars that need to like hit at the beginning of a chorus. You know, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some like percussion. There's like some percussion rides. Like even on the drums here, you can see, you know, you did these little rides. You did like this moment, you know, out of the B section to the A for the drum fill, kind of helping bring that more forward. On top of just, you know, some, you know, it looks like we're kind of just hovering on the fader, lifting it a little bit for parts of the bar. Just give me that little human. It makes things sound more human in so many cool ways, right? Like we've been compressing and doing all these other stuff to it.
Exactly. I mean, we've done all this stuff that we spent so much time talking about, like kind of getting everything to glue together, you know. But once it's kind of found its tone and space, then you kind of actually have to put some dynamics back into it, you know. And it's like performance dynamics. I was working on another mix before we got on today, and there's this really cool interplay in the bridge between the like the guitar and the piano, mostly trading like kind of phrases and licks,
Yeah.
but sometimes, like for instance, the piano was kind of playing some uh, uh, less leading melody stuff while the guitar was doing it, but the piano was a little bit loud. It was kind of covering up the guitar. I didn't want to just crank the guitar to get it loud enough over the piano. It's just like I turned the piano down a little bit at that moment so that I was also turning it up. It kind of like getting everybody out of the way. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that going on too.
Totally. Well, and so it's a question here. People are asking, like, so how do you do this without a fader? Without one of the biggest requests that we see from folks all the time is they want control surface support. So you're doing this with the trackball, right?
With the trackball, yeah. I mean, I'll mostly be happy to get a control surface implementation because of the multiple fader aspect of it. I have found working in Luna. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm going to expand on this for a second. One of the benefits that I've discovered in using Luna is that I have to work a lot less. I have to do a lot less in the Luna platform than I have had to do in other DAWs in the past. Okay, because of the sound of the bussing, the tape, the just the musicality of it, and that it just like sounds like a recording studio versus some other DAWs that just sound like not very flattering recording devices. So I'm having to do a little bit less, but when you're working with a control surface, you also have to deal with the delay, of the communication between the device and the software. I have found that with my trackball and the focus fader in Luna, the fader is like, it's super responsive and very detailed, just a little bit goes a long way, and I'm able to get enough articulation that I'm not sad that I don't have a control surface. Like I said, I'd welcome it, but yeah, I'm just doing it right on the focus fader. I just throw it in touch most of the time, and just do the rides there, and it's been super great. It feels really good. I've gotten used to it. I think it feels really good. The response time of it's really good, and the detail of it's good. But the thing that I love the most about it is that because I'm doing the automation in the session in the software, that I'm not having to deal with the delay, the feeling of getting used to the hardware fader not being 100% in sync with the audio. It's just like, because you can be making a fader move and you're responding to what you're hearing, but the move isn't landing. It's late. It's not landing where you want it.
You're making the move. You're making the move, and then hearing it like 100 milliseconds later. And sometimes that delay can be huge, right?
And so you have to develop a feel. You develop a feel, and you anticipate. It's just like you're either moving ahead or behind, whatever the feel has to be. And so this has been great. I have no complaints. I have no complaints about it.
Yeah, it's actually funny. There was a Luna update. It was a while ago. It was one of the early updates, but that was one of the things that they tweaked was the automation delay compensation, and just overall the automation feel, the snappiness of it, for that exact reason of like they wanted the automation to not only be locked in time wise, but also to have that sort of immediate feel. If you get Jacquire, I know you've worked on SSLs and Neve consoles with flying fader. Like you've worked on hardware automation solutions before, and the difference that there is between a MIDI, a HUI control surface, and an actual real life fader, and just how immediate those moves are in the reaction of it. It is like there's a tangible difference there.
100%, and this is more like the hardware experience. So yeah, it's so that's what I do, and fortunately, because I feel like Luna is helping me with my workload. It's just like, I do a fair amount of detail automation, but honestly, this is probably half of what I used to have to do.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Like that's the thing I hear so often with everybody that we were having on the show, man. Is like it's everyone's kind of saying the same sort of stuff. Of like, man, if I end up having to do so much less because Luna is kind of giving you that head start. It's the fact that it's got a sound to it. Just simply by bussing things together, adding some multi-track tape. Adding some master tape, like adding these little bits, like all this, the cumulative effect of all these things result in all of us needing to do less automation, less compression, less work, less of the things that we're kind of used to doing, because you're just getting to that sound so much faster.
Yeah, that's 100% been my experience. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Jacquire, man, dude, this has been really fun to break down the session. We're leaving a lot of stones unturned here, but that's on purpose because no later than very soon, most likely tomorrow or Thursday, you guys are gonna be able to download the session for yourselves, get your hands in there, really explore it for yourselves, kind of uncover all the different things that Jacquire's doing. There's some really cool stuff with the vocal processing from a compression and EQ standpoint that you guys should check out. There's obviously you can get in, tweak with the effects. So, you can go in here, you can save Jacquire settings and use them later, explore the tracking side of things, some of the input signal chains. There's a lot to learn. On top of the fact that you can, if you really want to, you can save a version. You can come up here, do save new version, and call it Ben's Messy Mix. And you can delete all Jacquire's hard work and love and try it for yourself and really use this as a platform to experiment with. And of course, you can always open up the old version and get back to hear, be able to A/B between yours and Jacquire's. But that's it's the real reason why we love doing stuff like this for you guys is for you guys to have a chance to get in there, have some incredibly well recorded material, incredible musicians, incredible production and engineering on your part, Jacquire. It's so cool that we're able to bring these sessions to everyone out there that's using Luna.
I know it is exciting. It's like you should use this as a playground sandbox to just kind of get in and play around and have some fun. Ben, when you were scrolling past, there's one thing I noticed that I do want to clarify on that vocal effect.
Yeah.
There's the in the intro there's that come on and with all the delay on it. It's a printed effect that I put on its own track.
Yep.
But I left the plugins that I use to derive that sound on that lead vocal track. They're just inactive, and so that's what those are there. That's what they're there for. Just so.
Yeah. So EP34 and the raw. So these two together, what you did is you put those on, and then you printed, basically committed the audio, brought the result effect back in here. So that's kind of almost your wet dry, right? So you got the dry signal up here on the main track, but then you've got the feedback delay vocal right here.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out, that's why those plugins are sitting there, and that's how that one little moment was created that's in the intro.
That's awesome. Well, Jacquire, man, dude, thank you so much. Like, man, it's so cool to be able to ride shotgun alongside you and see the recording process, learn about this mixing process. And man, just me and everyone in the chat, we're all so thankful that you are so generous with sharing all the knowledge and inspiration behind recording. People are just flabbergasted with the depth of material that you're sharing with us here. And I hope you know, man, everyone out there, everyone in the chat has just absolutely been thrilled to be able to learn. We're not just talking about about plugins here. We're talking about the thought process and the philosophy behind your decisions, and getting to hear this in real time. It's super special, man. I so appreciate you coming on and doing stuff like this with us. Oh man,
it's absolutely my pleasure. It's a thrill. I mean, it's all this, all my experience and knowledge it's provided a wonderful experience for me in my life, certainly, but it's so meaningful to be able to share it. I really value that. I value you, my relationship with the company, the work that you guys have done to create this platform. This is not a paid infomercial. I really use this stuff. And I mean, I would further just say that, it's just listen, I have collected a lot of great gear.
Mm-hmm.
But this is my second experience, the Cass McCombs and this, going start to finish all the way through the recording process with the system, right? And I am as happy with this as I could be with, you know, using only this stuff or a combination of stuff. So it's just like it's absolutely my pleasure to share it and be partnered. And you know, it's like I dig this stuff, and I'm happy that everybody is enjoying the opportunity that we have to share it.
Hell yeah. Well, man, so everybody, make sure to check out the session. It should be up there in the app tomorrow. Check out the song. It's available on Spotify, iTunes, available everywhere. And then I know, Jacquire, you're working on you've got your own YouTube channel as well. If you guys go to YouTube, search for Jacquire King, you're going to be doing some behind the scenes videos of this whole process as well. That'll be up here in the next month or so.
I think we're targeting some mid-February. Guys, my YouTube channel is in its infancy stages. There's not really much there to look at. There's a little bit, but what we're going to do is Ben and Universal Audio they're letting us take all this live stream footage, and we have been filming behind the scenes, like the stuff that you guys weren't able to see on the very first day when we kind of wrote the song and recorded it. We filmed all that stuff kind of behind the scenes, and so we're gonna put together a video that is like kind of a cut down version of these live streams, and add in some of our behind the scenes footage, and just kind of give you guys another opportunity to look and see where the microphones were placed, and just sort of the interaction and some of the behind the scenes stuff. So that'll be coming in February, and I hope that's enjoyable and informative as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and guys, we've got a couple more shows before the end of the year. We've got a show this Thursday with Young Guru and Anthony Cruz. Remember that Beat Maker Challenge, you guys? Thousands of you submitted beats. Thank you so much. We're going to be judging and picking our top beat on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. And then we're quickly following that up next week with 2 more masterclasses where we're going to take the winning song, record vocals on top of it, and then Guru and Cruz are going to both mix the same set of stems, and we're going to get to see 2 mixers take on the same set of tracks. Man, I'm looking. It's a lot of work to put these shows together, but man, I am so excited to do this one as well. Just like we got to do here with Jacquire. Like it's so cool to be able to find new ways to be able to show you guys how to put these tools to work and learn from these incredible, experienced producers and engineers out there. So yeah, Jacquire, man, dude, thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you everybody out there for watching. Everybody stay safe, have a good day, go make some good music, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Peace.